metaphorical tree of knowledge of good and evil, you will die. You will experience a death. And it says you will surely die. First of all, I want to talk about the tree itself. There's a knowledge of good and evil. Now, this is all a metaphor. This is a metaphor. An allegory. Knowledge of good and evil. What is good and evil? It's very subjective. We could debate what is considered to be good and what is considered to be evil, and for many people that changes and is subjective. But yet, a common perception of good and evil is anything that causes pleasure and joy, an experience of pleasure and joy, is considered good. Anything that causes suffering and pain is considered basically to be evil. And you will have a knowledge of good and evil if you partake of this tree, but you will surely die. Adam did not partake, and you know, Eve came from Adam, who also, they were both created from the dust, the metaphorical dust of the earth, or the self of which everyone shares. One thing though I noticed that, and you'll notice this across cultures as they talk about the serpent, and I've talked about this in other videos. The serpent beguiles Adam, and beguiles him because he gives him half-truths. I mean Eve. Adam and then later Eve. Beguiles Adam and Eve by telling them that if they partake of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they will be as the gods and know good from evil. And that is a truth, but the other half-truth in this allegory is that the serpent does not tell them that they are going to die and suffer and be shut off from the presence of God or perceiving God, the ones who had created them. These things are not told to them. They're basically just told that you will be like the gods that created you and know good from evil. One thing that I find interesting in this story is that the gods seem to know what good and evil is, yet they live forever and have never partaken of death. And if the tree of knowledge of good and evil is how one becomes, in this allegory, aware of suffering and joy, perceptions of suffering and joy that occur in this world, how do the gods know this without having ever partaken of the fruit themselves? And I will discuss that a little later in this video, because that was part of the lie as well. One thing that should be remembered too is that the snake is here in the garden, and the snake is a symbol of what many mystics refer to as DNA, the hidden snake that is within all organisms. And this DNA strand, you began by attaching your consciousness to your soul that was created before your birth, your physical embodiment. You attach your consciousness to a strand of DNA, and that grows into an embryo and a fetus, and later into a human. And as this DNA serpent-like, the serpent symbol of the DNA grows and you attach yourself to it, your consciousness becomes fixed with it, and it grows with the embodiment of the organism that develops from the DNA. Now, DNA is within all living organisms. If you go out into the park or your backyard and you stand around, you cannot see DNA. But yet, it is within every cell of your body. It is within every blade of grass. It is within every tree, plant, and animal. It is within the worms, the insects. DNA is what is the hidden snake within all organisms that keeps us bound to this realm. Adam and Eve were beguiled by the serpent. And the serpent promised them that if they partake of this, the serpent of DNA, you partake of this fruit, you are going to know good and evil as the gods do. That was their promise. The serpent, now remember, I've always found it interesting that the serpent is within the garden. Now, even if we say DNA, and DNA is representative by the serpent is within the garden that Adam is placed in. And Adam's soul is innocent. It never dies. It knows no corruptibility. It has everlasting life. Is in a perfect, beautiful state created on this earth by beings who don't actually live here. You notice the gods that created the earth that are mentioned in the Hebrew text, they visited the Garden of Eden, but they don't live there. I've always wondered where they went to. Adam does not realize when he is created within time and space as a soul, that is incorruptible and in this pure paradisical state, he does not realize that there is more beyond the garden. And that is where the gods are, these angels that never partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, yet somehow have the knowledge of it. And again, we'll discuss how they get that a little later. But they visit him. And some of these gods say, do not partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil because you are going to die. But yet I find it ironic that the one who created the Garden of Eden, the gods, the 72 gods mentioned in the Kabbalah of the Hebrew text, the ones who were the creators and the higher selves from which all souls come from that are begotten in lower realms on this planet, they created the garden. And that is where the snake is, the DNA, waiting there for to beguile Adam and Eve. It is almost like a trap. And I don't believe that if Adam and Eve had existed or been begotten in the angelic realm of which the gods themselves were, which is the highest plane of the astral where souls first became self-aware, they would never have partaken of this. But because they are innocent and do not understand, a soul that truly understands would never have done this. So in order to get a soul to partake of it, you've got to create that soul out of the self. Adam is created out of the dust of the earth. Souls create other souls out of the self that they see that surrounds them, the one self that we all share, and placed this new innocent soul that we call Adam and Eve into a realm that they had also created, where exists the serpent of DNA, waiting to beguile Adam. And a tree of knowledge of pleasure and pain, a knowledge of which these gods seem to have, but have never partaken of the fruit themselves. All of these things need to be kept in mind as you contemplate this allegory. One of the things that happens in the story is the serpent beguiles Eve, and then Eve and then later Adam through Eve to partake of the fruit. Now this is not an actual fruit, an actual tree. It is a symbol. It is the tree of knowledge is a symbol of an understanding of what it means to have corruptibility, pleasure, pain in this realm, this particular world that had for millions of years been guided by these oversouls through the evolution of organisms and through DNA. So, as they partake of the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of life, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam then suddenly finds himself in a corruptible body, a body that will die. He also experiences suffering and must now toil for his mundane survival. And he no longer is in the garden of the paradisical realm of where he was before. In the allegory, they say that he was driven out of the garden. He is driven out of the higher realms of this earth, the more paradisical realms that are more subtler, where he was created as and brought into self-awareness within the self that we are beyond time and space. He is brought into duality in this paradisical realm, and is now, after he partakes of the serpent of DNA's knowledge, tree of knowledge of good and evil, now finds himself attached to a body that is corruptible and that will grow old, that will die, that needs to fight for survival. And these are all depicted of the situation we find ourselves here in the physical plane. We are souls that are now attached to matter through DNA, the serpent. And so also he cannot perceive God. The gods, that 72, the gods that created his soul in their image, he no longer can perceive them now. And that is because the senses of your body you're now attached to this dense matter, this DNA that is growing in a mundane realm, and you are now attached to it, and now you are subject to 5 senses of the physical body. And the gods can still perceive him. They are more subtle, and these higher souls, these oversouls that we talk about on this channel,